Welcome in, everyone, to this episode of Craze's Corner. You're going to want to make sure you stay tuned. We're going to be talking about our way too early top 10 running back rankings, so you're definitely not going to want to miss that. We're going to start off with some news. The first big news of the day, the Chargers have solidified their defense, bringing in J.C. Jackson on a 5-year, $82.5 million deal. They also traded for Khalil Mack. And added Sebastian Joseph Day to keep up with these high-powered offenses that are now in their division with the Broncos and the Chiefs. So the Chargers have definitely taken it upon themselves to decide, you know what, they're going to try and put 30 on us. We're going to try and stop them as best we can. Second story for today is Baker Mayfield's time may be coming to a close in Cleveland. He posted a goodbye letter to the city, pretty much saying he thanked them. And pretty much saying this isn't his decision to move on, but as the Browns are in the mix for Deshaun Watson as of the time of this recording. You'll probably know by the time this episode airs, but in the midst of all that, Baker Mayfield there's a chance that he is not with the Browns, and that chance is looking higher and higher as time passes. And finally, the Jacksonville Jaguars were listening to the show last week and decided to surround Trevor Lawrence with some weapons so he can be a top 12 quarterback next year. The Jacksonville Jaguars spent big money on Christian Kirk and Zay Jones at the wide receiver position, bringing in Evan Ingram at tight end, as well as solidifying the offensive line with Brandon Sheriff. They also brought in some defensive positions as well, so they're definitely revamping, and hopefully Doug Peterson can take this team to the next level. But the main story there was Christian Kirk getting his 4-year, $72 million deal. Do you guys think that was a good deal, or are the Jaguars going to regret it? Let us know using the Media app. The Media app is a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host your own virtual press conference from your phone. You can record it and post it to all social medias. Tag us in the post, and then we want to know if you guys think that contract was as terrible as everyone is making it out to be, or will Christian Kirk live up to a $72 million price tag? So you can check this app out. It's on the Google Play and the App Store. And now let's welcome in our guests. We have Will and Zach joining us today. Welcome in, guys.
Hey.
Yo.
So what do you guys think? Christian Kirk worth that $72 million deal?
Yep. Psych. Yeah. Well, I mean, I acquired him from you, Zach, in Dynasty. So from that perspective, I would say it's a plus because the finance team is going to look at, talk to the coaching staff, be like, listen, this guy needs 12 targets a game or we're going bankrupt. So good for Christian Kirk, good for Christian Kirk's agent, but super duper overpaid.
Yeah, for sure. It's good for Trevor Lawrence too, though. Let's keep that in mind. Top 12. We're going to speak that into existence throughout the offseason. Trevor Lawrence will finish top 12. But let's get right into it. It's going to be a long show. We're going to be talking about our way too early top 10 consensus fantasy running backs. Jeff's not here, but his ranking have been included, and we will make fun of all of his outlier picks because he's not here to defend himself. That's I guess just what happens. He decided, basketball game. We decided the fantasy football. So let's start it off. Our consensus running back one is going to be a surprise for most. We actually have Najee Harris ranked as the number one overall running back. I have him at 1, and Will also has him at 1. Jeff at 3, and Zach is lowest on him at 4. To me, the Steelers have put a lot of money into their offensive line this offseason. And, bringing in Mitchell Trubisky, he's not a downgrade over Ben Roethlisberger last year. To me, the big difference is going to be this offensive line. I think they're going to open up more holes for him. I think he stays just as involved in the passing game, and he's coming off of his rookie season, so he's still young. He was super duper involved last season. I think he gets more involved in the offense this season. There's tons going for him. He's super young. And like I said, that offensive line was terrible last year, and they put some money. James Daniels is a big guy in the middle there I do love. So to me, I can't see a way where he does worse than he does last season. Will, why do you have him at number 1?
I just think they're going to be a run-first team. And even if they pass, especially with Trubisky, I think it's going to be running back, 3-yard dump out in the flat. So I'm excited about Harris this year.
Yeah, I agree. Zach, you're the lowest on him. You have him at 4. Why is he not in your top 3?
So this is crazy because I got like made fun of last year because I had Najee top 5. People like, you're crazy, this is nuts. But like these rookie running backs always seem to hit for the most part unless your name's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Other than that, if you look back, all the first round running backs are pretty much hit in their rookie season. And if you look at what he did last year, the actual like percentage workload was so outrageous that to bank on that happening again it's a natural regression that it's either going to kind of level out at a certain point. And if Mitch Trubisky is now the starting quarterback who has, you want to talk about polar opposite quarterback play from Ben Roethlisberger to Mitch Trubisky. If you look back at that 2018 season, Mitch Trubisky is a super mobile quarterback, and the fantasy equation will tell you that naturally a running quarterback will take away from the running back in the the PPR perspective. Instead of dumping it down, he's just going to take off and run with it. And that was what really padded the stats for Najee last year, was just the pure volume. If that can be replicated again, then yeah, I think you guys are right. But I just think in the way the Steelers are going, he's just you gotta take a little bit of mileage off the young man. So to have him at 1, for me, that's about the only. I mean, I got 3 other guys ahead of him, but I don't know. It's tough for me to see that happening again. I mean, he basically replicated Saquon Barkley's rookie season from perspective of just utilization, and then a lot of people took Barkley. Granted, injury played a big part of it, but we really never saw that same season again. So I don't know. That's tough.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. To me, he only had 7 rushing touchdowns last year, which isn't a lot. I don't think that number increases drastically because I don't think the offense gets a lot better. I do think it gets a little bit better. I believe in Trubisky a little bit more than some others do. I think he will be a good quarterback. And to me, going from Buffalo now to the Steelers, I think those are the right kind of coaches for him. As you said, quarterbacks, sometimes they like to run when they're like that. But sometimes the coaches get in their head about, staying healthy. And, we've seen from Ben, he will run when he has to, but if he was going to dump it off, he's going to dump it off. He's older or whatever, but I think we will see similar things from Trubisky. And yeah, to me, the terrible offensive line last year and what Najee did on the ground through the air, I think with the improved offensive line, I think it gets better. Juju's not going to be there most likely, so there's some vacated targets that way as well. But let's move on to number 2, who Will was the lowest on by far. We have Jonathan Taylor. Zach and Jeff had him at 1. I have him at 2. And Will has him all the way down at 8. I'll start this off with Jonathan Taylor was an absolute beast last year. We don't know what's happening with their quarterback situation. Is that fare well for him or worse for him? We're not sure yet. Could be Jimmy Garoppolo, Matt Ryan if Deshaun Watson ends up there. Could end up being his quarterback, which I would love for him after what we saw Cordell Patterson do with Matt Ryan throwing in the ball. But yeah, to me, Jonathan Taylor, he's got a really good offensive line. He did it last year, finished as the RB1. So for me, he was a no-brainer pick at number 2. Zach, you had him at 1. Let's hear your reasoning.
He was just so much better. Even, the aforementioned Najee Harris, you're talking total scrimmage yards. Jonathan Taylor was the only running back to go over 2,000, total scrimmage yards, whereas Najee was second and he had 500 less scrimmage yards. So it's like there's a pretty big gap there. And when you're going for fantasy, I mean, he's the total package, right? He's got the physique. He's got the just pure, burst. I mean, his stats for broken tackles, like what he's able to do after first contact, is just silly. So not only is he able to just have these super long runs, but you can't even tackle him. Even if you get an arm on him, it's not going to work. He's gone. You talk about, I forgot what the game he had, who it was against, but he had like 50 points or something like that.
I think it was against Najee, the Patriots, right? It's
right,
5 touchdown game.
Whichever game, exactly. I think that's what it was. Yeah, and Najee does not have that upside, nor did he have that upside last year either. So for me, it's just the pure upside that Jonathan Taylor has showed in such a young career. I mean, it was only his second season in the NFL. You mentioned the great offensive line. There's not too much worse you can do than Carson Wentz. So it's not like he's, missing this great quarterback that was helping him sustain his success. Really, it was the offensive line. And it's not like there's any stud wide receivers there that are like drawing the defense back. So you figure if they can just get a quality starter, it doesn't even have to be a superstar quarterback in there, maybe someone in the draft. I don't know. All these trade rumors are going around. Even if he just, takes a step backwards slightly, and he has 250 more yards, right? Let's take half of the, the extra that he had versus Najee. He's still going to probably finish as RB1.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think the biggest question mark, Carson Wentz, he made the throws when needed to put him in position to score. Can their quarterback do that? Because he had 18 touchdowns, which was 11 more than Najee did on the ground. So that's a stat where I could definitely see that number coming down to that 14 range. And then at that point, that kind of cuts off. You said he had the more yards last year, which he did, but that cuts off that ceiling where it was actually against Buffalo. He had a 4-touchdown game.
There you go. Yep.
And I don't think, because Carson Wentz, people hate on Carson Wentz a lot, but he was not like he was terrible last season. He made some stupid plays for sure, but he also showed up when they needed him to, except against Jacksonville. But that's just a one-game situation that I think the Colts overreacted to. But yeah, I want to hear Will's reasoning for having me all the way down at 8. So let's get into that, Will. Why is he at 8 for you?
Spicy.
I think some guys are due for some rebound years. I think some guys are going to be like Cam Akers. Yeah, I got Cam Akers in front of Jonathan Taylor right now because honestly, I don't know what the Colts are doing. I'm all for moving Wentz, but it's look, I think like what I see what happened with the Vikings. A lot of Viking fans will tell you they wanted Kirk Cousins out. But I think they have the honest discussion. Okay, so if you get rid of him, who are you replacing him with? Now, I don't know if I would have signed him. I might have just played with that $45 million cap hit. But I'm having a problem with the Colts right now as an organization. The coach, remember, they wanted Wentz. He was going to run back the Eagles' glories days. And it just seems like there's a lot of disconnect in that organization right now. And that worries me about Jonathan Taylor. So I didn't drop him out of my top 10, but I am worried about his production. What are they doing? What are they doing as a franchise? Everybody was high on them, right, last year. Everybody thought, they could be a Super Bowl sleeper. They got Wentz and all that. And it seems like they've overreacted to the Jacksonville game at the end of the season. And I don't know, as an organization on offense, who they throwing the ball to, who's throwing the ball. And to think that won't affect Jonathan Taylor and looking at their schedule, I mean, their schedule's okay. It's not super hard, but it's not easy either. So I don't know. I mean, so I'm leery as of today in March of 2022 until I know who the quarterback is. If I have to make a list today, he's lucky to be in my top 10 right now. And after the trade today for a defensive end, what are you doing, Colts?
So I just got a notification across the top of my screen there that says the trade market for Jimmy Garoppolo has been the Colts, and the Colts have apparently been the only team that's interested. So for me, if you get Jimmy in there, I think that's also a good fit. He's gonna make some stupid plays, but he'll be like Carson Wentz.
So are they really gonna give up a first round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo?
I don't think they have to give up a first.
Well, the 49ers could have moved him then. If it was a second, the 49ers could have moved him by now. So why aren't the 49ers moving him?
It's a Trey Lance thing, but that's another
It's
right.
It's a Trey Lance thing, kind of, but it's also a Jimmy Garoppolo just had surgery last week too. So
true.
Gotta let you guys gotta be able to pass a physical before you can run through a trade there. So let's move on to 3, and I think 3 is a guy we're all high on. I'm actually the lowest. I have this player at 5, and Zach and Will both have him at 2. We're gonna be talking about Austin Ekeler. He's on an amazing offense with Justin Herbert. They're going to be in super high-scoring games within their division. I have him at 5 just because I absolutely love the guys that I have over him. This has nothing to do with hate against Austin Ekeler. Finished as the running back 2 last season behind none other than Jonathan Taylor. Austin Ekeler had, I think, 19 touchdowns on the year last year, if I'm not mistaken. That number will probably stay right around where it is. unless the Chargers do what I think they're going to do, and I think they're going to bring Melvin Gordon back on a 1-year contract, which worries me a lot about Austin Ekeler's touchdown upside, which he had last year. That may be factored a little bit into my rankings, but not a lot. I think even without Melvin Gordon, I think 5's good with Melvin Gordon there. If they do bring him back, Ekeler could drop to the top 10 for me. Because there's a lot of guys I was trying to fit into my top 10. I just couldn't do it. But I love Austin Ekeler, and I definitely see having him. He's got to be in the top 5. As long as Melvin Gordon stays out of San Diego. Zach and Will, you both had him at 2. Zach, tell me why he was 2 for you. You have Taylor and Ekeler as your 1 and 2, who finished 1 and 2 this year. So we're just predicting the same, I see.
At this point, it's just hard for me to come up with some sort of scenario where, I mean, especially for Austin Ekeler, I could probably make the case better for Ekeler right now than I could for Taylor. They both had 20 touchdowns last year, and Ekeler did it in one less game. And they were 1 and 2 in red zone opportunities. And you talk about Justin Herbert. That was a great point. If you have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion, I think Justin Herbert certainly could finish as the best real life and fantasy quarterback this season. So to have his running back just kind of follow suit just kind of makes sense. Now, if they do bring in some extra help, that's a different story. I don't really feel too threatened by Justin Jackson or Larry Roundtree, which is kind of the similar case for Jonathan Taylor. Again, 2 guys that are absolute studs and don't really have anybody to share the backfield with. I think that's what kind of keeps them in that elite tier in the 1 and 2 for me. So, yeah, I love Austin Ekeler because he's a huge fantasy guy, so that's definitely going to bump him up a few notches. But you talk, and when you think of Austin Ekeler, you just think of like this like little PPR. But I mean, when you're second in red zone, like opportunities, it's like he's kind of the whole package. So I don't know. For me, there's the upsides there, the offense is there. I mean, the defense is stacked right now, right? So you figure even worst case, right? So let's say that division is just nuts and it's like 50-45 every game. That's just more opportunities for Austin Ekeler, right? But if the defense is awesome and they're stopping the opposing offense all the time, Khalil Mack, JC Jackson, all these additions, now that's more opportunities for the offense to be on the field. And with the defense keeping the other team from scoring too many points, you figure more of the rushing game. And if you get in the red zone, which I think the Chargers will be capable of, and not much changes in the coaching staff, then there you go. You got another recipe for success for Ekeler.
You agree with what he said there, Will? You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, because I think we all know the AFC West is every game in that division is going to be 42-38, something crazy. So I'm all in on Ekeler. As long as he can stay. I'm a little worried about his health, but I think, we'll see. I think the upside outweighs the potential downsides.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I think the defense will definitely create some turnovers, which creates more opportunities for the offense, which I do think is a big thing of bringing in JC Jackson. That's definitely a big thing. Mr. INT, as he so-called proclaims himself to be on social media. So I definitely think that helps them out a lot that way. Just a little bit nervous about those touchdowns going down because, I don't know. I think I think Melvin Gordon will end up in in the chart in LA, and that just
after everything that happened.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been. I've seen a lot of rumors for him going back to LA, so we'll see if it happens. But let's move on to number 4, who Jeff was the highest on, and Will did not have ranked at all. We're gonna talk about Derrick Henry. Jeff had Derrick Henry at 2. We know Jeff is a big Derrick Henry fan. I have Henry at 4, which was just above Ekeler. Zach, you had Henry at 3, just behind Ekeler. So, me and you were pretty close there, 3 and 4. I think Derrick Henry's an absolute monster. I don't think anyone's going to, deny that. The injuries may be of concern for sure, but injuries can be of concern for almost every running back in the NFL at this point. Only some of the rookies at that point don't have injuries throughout their career, and that's because they've only been playing professional football for a couple years. But, he's a beast. they just let Julio Jones go, so they're definitely going to be running the ball. Ryan Tannehill, I think they've shown this year that Ryan Tannehill can't do it all himself. When he went down, Dante Foreman came in, had a few good games, but they struggled when that running game wasn't there. So I think they go back to completely relying on that. I had him at 4 because I love the guy. I got it 3. Irrationally love the guy. I have it 3. But I think the touchdowns are going to be there. The yards, the attempts, the carries, they're all going to be there. So for me, I think he was an easy pick to be in my top 5. Zach, what do you have to add to that as you have him at 3?
He played 8 games last season and still finished as the RB22. 10 touchdowns, was on a pace of, just about 2,000 yards, would have been the first running back in NFL history to do it back-to-back. He played 8 games and he finished as the RB22. He scored more fantasy points than Saquon Barkley and James Robinson, who played 13 games. Now let's play the game. Everyone loves the regression game. Let's cut his stats in half. That's 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns if you just completely take Derrick Henry at 50%. So even if you do take him as the 3rd running back off the board, and worst case scenario, he puts up 50% of what he did last year, you're still looking at a top 12 running back. So for those reasons, it's just hard to argue against Derrick Henry, but obviously the biggest red flag that everyone sees when they pull up Derrick Henry's game log or whatever is the injuries and the age, and he's reaching that age where running backs start to just hit that decline. But then again, we've never seen a running back like Derrick Henry before, so maybe he deserves a little bit of that anomaly ranking where he's just so different and good that he can withstand the crazy mileage he has on his body
he's
right
currently
now.
28, but he has 6 years in the league. But realistically, I don't count his first 2 seasons because he really didn't play much.
Yep.
So he's got 4 years on him, and he only played half a year last year. So I think that regression will come for Derrick Henry. I just don't think it'll be this year unless that regression is just injuries. And that's definitely something I could take up. Will, I want to hear your thoughts. Why is he not in your top 10?
I have a phobia of running backs over 28. 28 is my ceiling. I'd rather get out a year early than ride a year long. And so I'm hoping that a lot of people draft him in their top 10 in the drafts is coming around, because I just like younger running backs. Like I like rookies through like about 26, 27. After that, it's just, I think, teams start souring on them. They're in those second contracts. Teams are trying to move on from them. I'm not sure where Tennessee, there's always a couple teams that were playoff teams that fall back out of the playoffs. I'm not sure Tennessee has enough capital to improve and keep up with everybody. I mean, just looking at the AFC, it's crazy. Yeah. Right? I mean, it is completely crazy how many good teams there's going to be in the AFC. And I could see Tennessee being a good team, but still only getting 9 wins and maybe not making the playoffs, or just
9 wins might win that division, though.
It could.
That's the worst division in the AFC right now.
It can also keep you out of the playoffs too. Mm-hmm. So I say all that. I'm just a little worried about Tennessee overall, like the Colts. And when I see a 28-year-old running back. No, can't do it.
I mean, it's definitely fair. Let's move on to our number 5 consensus ranking. My favorite running back on the list, we're going to be talking about Christian McCaffrey. Whether Deshaun Watson's in Carolina or not, it doesn't matter. Christian McCaffrey just needs to stay healthy, and he'll be a top 3 running back. In my opinion, I have him at 3 originally, had him at 1, but I do have some concerns with the offense itself. Sam Darnold probably going to be the Panthers starting quarterback. That doesn't worry me that much because with Sam Darnold, CMC was still putting out great numbers at the beginning of last season. The only reason I could see you having him lower would be injuries, because he is going to be utilized as a slot wide receiver in some instances. He's going to be that running back. They brought in Dante Foreman, and that's the main reason I took him from 1. I think Dante Foreman comes in and becomes that goal line back, where sometimes Christian McCaffrey won't be getting that extra touchdown or 2. So I did drop him a couple spots because of that. I still think he'll score touchdowns, He's just going to be losing that short yardage work, which occasionally does get you a touchdown or two. But the receptions are going to be there if you're playing PPR. He's got to be in your top 5. Zach and Jeff both have him at 7. So, Zach, why are you down on Christian McCaffrey? Is it the injuries, or are you worried about the Panthers' offense and his utilization?
Well, as you know, I'm Ocean State, and his boo thing, Olivia Culpo, is from Rhode Island, the Ocean State. So that has nothing to do with any of my ranking purposes, but I just figured I'd throw that out there. Smallest state in the country, just figured to shout us out real quick. But no, it's the injuries. That's it. That's all it is. It's nothing else but injuries. He's I think I said it before on one of these shows. No one has the fantasy output that Christian McCaffrey has shown through his whatever, but through his career. But you look at it, it's what, 10 games he's played in the last 2 seasons.
It's not many, that's for sure.
So it's hard for me to rank. You're talking Joe Mixon, you're putting over him. So there's just it's more so the other guys and not necessarily him. And it's the injury and it's the offense. Now, if Zach's Christmas dream comes true and Deshaun Watson wakes up tomorrow a Panther, then this is going to change everything, right? I'm willing to put the injury aside because I just think the offense is going to take a massive step forward.
Yeah.
But even still, I'm worried. Like I don't love the whole idea of even taking him top 5, just because ask anybody that in a redraft league that took Christian McCaffrey these past couple of years, I can guarantee you if they weren't pretty savvy or made a really good late round draft pick, it probably really killed their team. And it's not like you could really rely on Chuba Hubbard. So you can't even say if you did the whole handcuff thing, it really worked out well. Chuba Hubbard only had like a couple good games maybe. So when you lose, not only, and it's his position too, you can afford to, like, if you want to take a wide receiver in the first round, you could probably make up for that. But when you lose a running back, man, it's really tough to recover from that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, he's got all down in the world. All comes down to staying on the field. Will, you had him at 5. Anything you want to add to the Christian McCaffrey thing? I'm assuming for you, it's got to be injuries.
It's injuries and it's the quarterback. If it's Deshaun Watson, I'd probably move him up to 3. I'd flip my 3 and 5. If it's whoever the heck is playing out of the stands every Sunday, I think it's just, I keep him at 5 because I think he gets used a lot, and just hope that maybe he's had a couple of injury years. Now he's due for a break where he doesn't get injured.
Yeah, I mean, all right. Let's move on to a guy I'm going to let Will introduce here. This is Will's guy. Will's got him at number 3. Will, take it away. Introduce your boy.
I think if you're going into your draft and you're sitting at the bottom of first round in a redraft league, you should go heavy with the Vikings. I think that Viking offense is going to put up 30-some points a game. I think they're going to throw the ball, and I actually think that's what makes Dalvin. I think Dalvin's been underused as a receiver in the last couple of years of the Vikings. That he should have I think there's a chance he could double his receptions, because I think people they're not going to let the Vikings beat them deep. And so they'll drop back in the coverage, and Dalvin's going to be open in the flat. And I just got a gut feeling that he's going to get a lot of touches. I think the Vikings, there was rumors they were trying to trade him. So I think they're going to look at that contract and they're going to be like, you know what, we're going to get every dollar out of him this year that we can. And I think the Vikings defense is going to be suspect, switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4. So they're going to have to score. And I think that works for fantasy owners. So, yeah, I think Dalvin I was debating between Dalvin and McCaffrey at 3 or 5. And when Cousins stayed, and the new offensive philosophy being a more open throwing to the running backs, right?
Yeah.
More of a spread offense, putting pressure on the defense. Yeah, I think Dalvin's built for that type of offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dalvin's going to have a big year for me. Putting together this top 10 list was extremely hard. There's a few guys that I wanted to put it. When I went into this, I was like, all right, there's some guys that I'm going to have in my top 10, and they're not in my top 10 anymore. I have Dalvin Cook at 7. For me, it was harder to put him higher. He kind of burned people who drafted him high last year, finished as the RB16, played 13 games. And realistically, you're not expecting Dalvin Cook to play all 17 games every season because, that's really not in his wheelhouse. But yeah, Dalvin Cook, he's going to be on a great offense. I agree with Will. I think that's definitely going to be good. Kirk Cousins, always been an underrated fantasy football quarterback. I almost put him in my top 10 last week. And Justin Jefferson's there to take away some of the pressure from Dalvin Cook. So yeah, I agree. I think Dalvin Cook is definitely a great running back. And with all these options at running back, it kind of scares me going into the draft that some of these teams are going to absolutely screw over their players' fantasy value by just absolutely drafting someone they didn't need to have. But Zach, what are your thoughts on Dalvin Cook?
Yeah, you touched on it. He didn't, shocker. He didn't play a full 16 or 17 game season. In 6 games, I believe he had less than like 14 points. So he was actually kind of unreliable at times too. So you're looking at Dalvin really kind of shifted into that elite, every week stud PPR guy, whatever, everything. He had it covered to kind of like a more boom bust guy. Yeah. So it's just hard to these guys that can't play a full season. It's hard for me to rank them outside of the area that I have them because I just don't want to risk my first round draft pick in a redraft league. Dynasty is a whole nother monster, but if we're just talking just this fresh new season, especially with a bunch of rookie running backs coming in too, that could really muddle things up here. So yeah, Dalvin, man, it's I don't know. He's either going to be more of the same, or we're going to look back and go, man, I'm so glad I took the risk on Dalvin. But it's just it's tough. I want a home run hit. I want a guy that's not dealing with injuries, that can play at least 15 games a year. So it's just injuries similar to CMC.
Yeah, and as you said, I think he's going to be, if you draft him, if he's falling, I don't know where he's going in redraft leagues right now. I haven't looked into that at all. But if he's falling into the later rounds of the first round, I don't think you're going to be disappointed unless he gets injured super early on. Because like you say, he's going to put up points if he's on the field. It's just being on the field that's the big thing for him. We can make fun of Jeff because Jeff didn't have Dalvin Cook in his top 10. So obviously, just Jeff, what are you doing, bro? Why isn't Dalvin Cook in your top 10? Wish he was here to explain. Because I don't know. For me, I don't see a way he isn't.
He's got Rashad Penny top 10.
You're right. Number 1, baby.
So he let's move on to number 7, who's a guy that probably going to be on the field. I don't think he gets suspended by the NFL, but that's going to be Alvin Kamara. Zach, Jeff, and I all had him at 6, and Will did not have him in the top 10.
No, I would have it at 11.
Yeah, for me, Alvin Kamara has been extremely consistent throughout his career. I don't think this quarterback changed no matter who it is. I don't think that affects him as drastically as people are thinking. I think Alvin Kamara was going to be on the field more than he's ever been before because Sean Payton is no longer there. So I think he gets utilized more and more, which I think is good for his fantasy value. The only question there comes, can he handle the workload? Because the injuries might creep up. He hasn't really struggled with injuries that much throughout his career because Sean Payton has managed that so well, but I think he's going to be on the field a lot. Like I said, me, Zach, and Jeff both had him at 6. I think that's probably the perfect. He finished as a running back 8 last year, and he only played 13 games.
Right.
And that was with Jameis Winston, Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill at quarterback. So really, realistically, if they get Watson, Alvin Kamara is going to be in my top 5 for sure, easily. Without Watson, I'm not super worried. I've still taken him at 6. Zach, what are your thoughts? You had him at 6 as well. Anything you want to add to that?
All career lows for Alvin Kamara last year. You're talking a guy that was looking at like 80 something targets every season, or 80 receptions every season rather. So it's tough because all of that correlated to Drew Brees being the quarterback. And the minute you took Drew Brees out of the equation, it was an instant. Yeah, exactly. But Zach mentioned he, still finished within the top 10.
Yeah, his worst year. Oh, that running back 8, that guy's pretty trash.
Right. So I think you're right. I think that's the sweet spot right there. Maybe right outside the top 5, top 6. Because then you start looking at other guys, and they really can't compare to Alvin Kamara's ceiling once you start getting out of the top 6. So I think his just raw ability is what keeps him in the conversation, with those guys we just, mentioned. So it's tough because whoever the quarterback is going to directly impact what Alvin Kamara does next year, for the better or for worse. So if it's, it's Deshaun Watson, just like the other guys we mentioned that Deshaun Watson could be looking at, it's a major bump. But if it's, if it's Taysom Hill or Ian Book, if they bring back James Winston, maybe that's a good thing. But
yeah, I think they'll bring back Winston if they don't land Watson. I think that'd be the smart thing to do, and I think that's what they're going to do because the Saints are a fairly smart organization. They seem to actually have a handle on what they're doing, unlike some other teams. But
besides the disastrous salary cap,
but they got out of their disastrous salary cap without cutting
salary
players,
cap.
So.
Salary cap. I love
it. They cleared, I think it's $85 million within the past 2 weeks, and they didn't cut a single player. Whereas you have teams who have been over the cap and they were cutting players, and now the Saints are still in the running for Watson. So if you take all that into account, that's some mastery of the system.
Give that guy a raise.
What worries you about Alvin Kamara and why you have him at 11 and not inside your top 10?
Too much change. And I don't think it's coincidental that, like Zach was saying, that Drew Brees left and he bottomed out, and we're assuming that's his bottom out. They've had a coaching change, right? And I'm not a big fan of Dennis Allen, just be completely honest with you. I'm not a big fan of his. And if they get Deshaun Watson, look, they're $774,000 above the cap. So somebody's leaving.
They'll just restructure.
No, they're going to have to.
If they trade for Watson, they'll give Watson an extension and lower his cap this year.
They're still going to lose some pieces, and they're not going to be able to add anything. And no one knows what Michael Thomas is doing. I mean, the Saints could either be the surprise team next year if they get Watson and everybody gets on the same page, or it could be a dumpster fire. They could go back to the Aints and everybody wearing bags on their head. I mean, it's that. I don't think there's no middle of the road. The Saints are not a 8-9 team or a 9-8 team. The Saints are either 1-16 or they're 13-4.
I think if they bring back Jameis, they'll be around 8 wins. But I get what you're saying there. I think if they don't do anything to their quarterback situation, Armstead leaves. I think that's definitely a terrible situation for them. But you bring back Jameis. Even if Armstead leaves, I think Jameis is still enough to run that offense. They kept their offensive coordinator, which I think is a big thing that way. So there will be a change in the play caller because it's not going to be Sean Payton anymore, but they'll still be running the same offense. And I don't think Dennis Allen's really going to do much to control the offense because defense is his forte. And I think he'll be smart and just leave it to their offensive coordinator.
If you would have said, give me your 11, I would have made him 11 or 12.
Yeah. So you didn't have him that far out.
No.
But let's talk about a guy next who Jeff was the highest on and Zach was the lowest on by far. We're going to talk about Javonte Williams. I think I have Williams at 8, which is exactly where we have him ranked here in the consensus. Will, you had him at 10. To me, Javonte Williams, without Melvin Gordon there, he is the one running back in Denver. He finished in the teens last year with splitting with Melvin Gordon. He took off at the end of the season with snap share. You take that other running back away, whether or not they add someone, they probably will, but will they be as good and demand as many carries as Melvin Gordon? Probably not. I think the touchdown upside is going to be there for him now that Russell Wilson is involved in this offense. That also allows teams to not be able to stack the box with the trio of wide receivers they have. So for me, this is a guy who's going to see more opportunity on a better offense, who's 21 and extremely talented. I wanted to put him higher. I just couldn't find a way to put him over Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook just because those are the known commodities. He was a guy I was going into this thinking was going to be in my top 10 or in my top 5 until I realized how much talent there still is at the running back position. So for me, he falls at 8. Will, you have him at 10? Anything you want to add to Javonte Williams?
I think Russell helps him. Yeah, I would have had him maybe top 10 without Russell, but I think he's definitely a top 10. And right now I have him in 10 on my list heading into the season with the current makeup of the Broncos.
Yeah, I think like you said, Russ helps him. He brings the touchdowns that I think they were lacking before. Zach, you're the lowest on Javonte. What are you worried about?
It was the output. For some reason, I don't know if like all the fantasy community got together and like didn't invite me and were like, listen, we're all gonna fall in love with Javonte Williams, and we're not really gonna tell people why. We're just gonna say that, man, if he gets that opportunity, and he did get the opportunity, right? That one game against Kansas City, and I think that's what really cemented people in the belief that he's a superstar in the making, which I'm definitely probably way too low on him. But the reason why I have him ranked there is because at the time when I was ranking them, I felt like Melvin Gordon was going to resign with Denver. So once he goes and signs somewhere else, he will definitely shoot up for sure, up the rankings. But just at the moment, it felt like Gordon was going to be back. And if you want to talk about guys that were scoring touchdowns, it was Gordon. It wasn't Javonte. So, and his pass game a little sporadic. The involvement. Russell is definitely known for having at least top 15 running backs. Chris Carson was serviceable. Beast mode was beast mode.
Rashad Penny.
Rashad Penny, right? Because he's a perennial superstar.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
All pro.
I mean, he did. He proved it. Whether it was a fluke or not, he was Russell Wilson's running back, and he performed
behind
a
terrible offensive line. So
right. And you guys are right. This is a much improved offense just with Russell Wilson signing. You figure if Javonte's by himself back there, man, he has top 5 upside. Just the fact that you got like 2 stud wide receivers on the outside that can just open the field up, and then Javonte can just feast in between the lines.
If they don't bring anyone else in, his touchdowns on the ground are going to quadruple. I'll have him 16 plus for sure. They bring someone in who could be more of that goal line back, take some touchdowns away, that'll drop. But right now, as their offense sits, I could see him going for 16 touchdowns on the ground, which is similar to, not quite as many as Jonathan Taylor, but it's getting up there. I think the opportunity is there for him. That Broncos just have to let it be and not bring in another running back. And then I think we will see Javonte Williams come out.
I think that's the disconnect between the fantasy and real football is that the Broncos aren't going, oh man, what if we just like beat the life out of our young superstar running back just so all the fantasy people can love him? They're like, wait, no, that's terrible because we invested in this guy and we want to win while he's on his rookie contract. So let's try to lower the chances of an injury. So I think no matter what, even if it's not Melvin Gordon, there'll be somebody there. But if it's not Melvin Gordon, it doesn't really matter for me. I'm still going to put Javonte much higher because I don't think there's anybody floating out there right now at the running back position that's going to threaten him if they were to sign them tomorrow. And, I mean, it's hard to see Fournette not coming back to Tampa, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if Fournette goes to Denver, I mean, that's going to kill both of their. They both. So that's worst case scenario for sure.
There's definitely those just a bigger back who, to me, would take away from that touchdown upside is the thing I'm most worried about. But let's move on to a guy that Zach is the highest on. And Zach was talking about taking this guy over Christian McCaffrey. And he is the only one who has this guy ranked over Christian McCaffrey. That's going to be Joe Mixon. Will and I both have Mixon at 9. Zach, you have him at 5. I'll let you start off the Joe Mixon conversation just because you are the highest on him. So go ahead. Let us know why he's a top 5 running back for you.
He's on a really good offense, an offense that I project to improve. He's coming off a great season. He was involved both the pass game and running game, scoring touchdowns, and he played every single game. I think except for what you look at. I think he was benched, or was he either?
I think they benched everyone that game, if I remember correctly.
Yep. I mean, you're talking 70% snap percentage across the board. So he's obviously the running back one there. There's no one really to Samaje Perine. I mean, I'm not even sure if he's still on the roster coming into the season. So for me, it's like anybody that is instantly not threatened by the guy behind him or the opportunity of someone coming in and vulturing goal line touchdowns, I'm gonna just bump him up because for the running back position, I want, if you're not a PPR guy, which I wouldn't really consider Joe Mixon to be, you better be scoring touchdowns. And I think Joe Mixon is going to be set up for success, man. You look at the Bengals. If Jamar Chase slightly matures, Joe Burrow slightly matures, T. Higgins gets slightly better, you're talking about even more opportunity for this offense, to fall in the end zone, and that's going to directly correlate to Joe Mixon, in my opinion.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me, which I'm sure is the only thing that worries Will as well, is that I think that this offense could regress a little bit as defenses get the tape on them. I love what they've done with their offensive line so far. I think that's a big help for Joe Mixon in particular, and Joe Burrow. But their offense to me last year was probably about as good as I think it can be. The sacks were there, which, maybe, but when Joe Burrow was running out of the pocket, that's kind of what led to Jamar Chase getting all these receptions and touchdowns, is because they are so on cue that they knew exactly where each other was going to be. So once they're in the pocket, I think, it's going to be great for Joe Burrow's health and longevity, but I don't think that really adds to the passing game. I think it will add to Joe Mixon a little bit. I wanted to put Joe Mixon higher as well. It's hard. It's extremely hard. Will, you also have him at 9. Anything you want to add to this?
I wanted to put him up at 5 or 6. We'll see. We'll see what the 2022 Bengals look like. I think they're going to be a good team. They make a run at the Super Bowl. I just don't know how they're going to evolve and distribute. But I do tell you, if I'm sitting at the bottom of round 1 in a redraft league,
sweet spot.
He's sitting there. I'm taking him. If he's sitting there at 9, 10.
That's kind of where I want to be in a redraft right now, is near the end, because I think that the talent there you're going to get is
that's the perfect spot for me. You guys are absolutely right. You look at 2018 running back 10, 2019 running back 13, last year running back 4. So if he plays 16 games, or even one of those seasons was 14 games, he's a top 14 running back.
Yeah, I agree. We can all make fun of Jeff. Jeff did not have Joe Mixon in his top 10. So shame on you, Jeff. I'm not sure what you were doing.
I got to see Jeff's top 10 because I want to see like the guys that did make it, because obviously
I'll go over Jeff's top 10 after. But let's move on to the next guy, who I will let Will introduce, just because Will is extremely high in comparison to me and Zach, who did not have this guy in our top 10, but he cracks the consensus top 10 because Will has him at 4. Go ahead, Will.
I'm high on Cam Akers this year. I think teams will try to adjust to the Rams and say, okay, let's see if you can be patient. Let's see if you can move the ball the whole game running on us. And I think he's going to be healthy. And if I'm sitting at the bottom of round 1, and I would be very happy if my first 2 picks were Cam Akers and Mixon. I'd feel really good about my season if I had that. My running backs would be locked.
I'm worried about Akers. I'm worried about the Rams giving him the opportunity to be the number 1 back after what we saw in the playoffs last year. Sure, he just made a remarkable recovery, but I think Darrell Henderson's going to be a pest, and I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in another running back. Sony Michel is still a free agent. Maybe he'll be back. That kills his value, especially in the red zone, because Sony Michel was great when it came to that goal line work. And I'm worried a little bit about the Rams offense taking a step back, rushing wise. Like, I think their offensive line has got a lot worse. Whitworth's gone, Corbett's gone. I think that hurts the entire offense. I think Cooper Kupp takes a step back from the stats he puts up last year. I'm excited about the Rams offense. I still think they're going to be a great team. Akers was a guy he was almost in my top 10, just didn't quite make it. Zach, what are your thoughts on Cam Akers?
I mean, the Achilles things, it really plays a part for me, because it's hard to like look back and really find what I'm looking for in Cam Akers. It's when you don't have the tape, you almost got to revert back to his college film to kind of really scout this guy. And the fumble thing is obviously a problem. I'm not going to hold that against him too much because there's been so many running backs in the past that we labeled fumble, prone or whatever, and never really turned out to be the case. But you're absolutely right. For you guys mentioned about the Bengals, talking about we might have seen the best of their offense last year. Talk about regression. I mean, you can't really what the Rams did last year. That's almost unrepeatable. So naturally, they're going to take a step backwards. That could actually favor the running back position. If you figure you want to talk about watching tape and figure out team, you cover number 10 on the wide receiver position. You pretty much got the game wrapped up. So I mean, Darrell Henderson is no joke. This Rams, the coaching staff, it hasn't really been anybody too prominent, unless I'm missing somebody, since Todd Gurley. So
yeah, I mean, you're missing Sony Michel.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. So for me to rank Cam Akers in my top 10, that's putting him above guys that I was able to, watch a full season of and get a better idea of what to expect. But then again, these young running backs, man, sometimes it just takes a little bit of time and they just jump onto the scene. But he certainly has it working against him, in my opinion, versus, a guy like Javonte that we feel very confident in. It's almost polar opposite for me with Cam Akers.
Yeah, I agree. So that rounds out our top 10. We're just going to keep going with some guys who made our individual top 10s. So our consensus 11, who Will was the highest on. Will is the highest on the next two players, but Will's the highest on Nick Chubb. He didn't make my top 10 because they cut their center, J.C. Tretter. Who knows who their quarterback's going to be? And Kareem Hunt's there. For me, I think Nick Chubb's an amazing running back. If you put him on another team, he'd be great. Just Kareem Hunt, a worse offensive line, and, a worse quarterback potentially. I'm worried. Will, you had him at 6?
I mean, this was before Mayfield wrote his farewell letter.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the Browns. Now look, if Deshaun Watson goes to Cleveland, may think about moving him up a little bit.
I'd move him up.
Get in top 5. But if it's, I don't know how they bring Mayfield back. I really don't know how you put Humpty Dumpty back together. So I'm trying to think who's the Browns starting quarterback. Could be a plus, could be a negative. Don't know.
Case Keenum. Oh my goodness. So Nick Chubb is one of those few players where there's a massive difference in his output fantasy wise between a PPR and standard league.
Yeah.
So he's virtually zero pass game involvement, but his breakaway, he's more of a pure runner. So I guess if you're in a standard league, which, I mean, who's in standard leagues today? I mean, do you watch DVDs and VHSs still? So if you're one of those people playing in one of those dinosaur leagues, then Nick Chubb is certainly going to be higher ranked and higher valued. But if PPR, I mean, you still look at it. He's 12 games in 2020, he finished in the PPR league as running back 11, running back 13 last season. Again, playing 14 games, but Kareem Hunt's back there drop kicking people. So you just really gotta value, where do you value this offense? For me, it's a step backwards in all directions. You lose Jarvis.
Odell's gone. Jarvis is gone.
It's almost like this feels like, which is crazy because the Browns never were something. So the fact that they're almost in rebuild mode is funny because they've been in rebuild mode for the last 30 years.
They were supposed to be something.
Right. And I think we saw what they were capable of. I think we saw the ceiling of Cleveland, Stefanski, and all that, fun loving, awful uniforms. It's just, it's tough to put Nick Chubb any higher than I would say. I think I have him right around 12 or
somewhere
13.
around there. I don't know.
Yeah,
he's an amazing player. Not hating on Nick Chubb, just fantasy wise, the value's not there for me. Let's move on to 12. 12's a guy I wanted to put in my top 10. He's at 11 currently for me. He's a guy Zach's been super high on. But Will ended up being the highest when it came down to our top 10s, and that's DeAndre Swift.
Yes.
Will has Swift at 7. Zach has him at 9, and I have him at 11. I think it's tough because he's on a bad offense, but he's extremely involved in the passing game on that bad offense with a quarterback who likes to throw to the running back position. He's still super young. The Lions' offensive line is pretty good. So DeAndre Swift, to me, he's a fringe top 10 fantasy football running back. Will, you're the highest on him come our top 10 rankings. So why is he number 7 for you?
I like young running backs. I do. To me, I think the data is pretty clear. Running backs are a rookie through like first up to that rookie contract, and then their first or second year of that second contract. After that, I don't know what it is. Something in the water. I don't know. That it's just the fall off is huge. So yeah, I think he's going to catch a lot of balls in a PPR. I do. I think Swift is going to be I wouldn't mind getting him by the looks of it. You probably get him in the top of the second round. I'd be really happy getting him in the top of the second round, or even near the bottom, depending on how your draft goes. If there's a run on running backs in the first round, then someone like him could drop lower than you expect. But we'll see. I'm high on him though, and that's hard to say because I hate the Lions.
Anti-Detroit.
Oh God! But you got to admit they were looking good at the end of the season. They were starting to look like they believed they could play, and we'll see.
Zach, what are your thoughts? You've been high on. You said Swift was going to be in your top 10 months ago. Your rankings come out. He's in your top 10.
I'm a man of my word when it comes to the Detroit Lions. Unlike the Ford family. No. I mean, look at what he did. I mean, just if you just the game log alone should give you the confidence and being okay. Well, it's in the games where he was kind of shut down the rushing game. Well, he had like 11 targets in the pass game, and when he didn't have any work in the pass game, he puts up 100-something yards on Pittsburgh, and he missed a bunch of games last year. Still finished as a top 15 running back. So it's tough to really hold those injuries against him. And I think if he did play a full season, you're talking about a guy I think people are going to be just in love with. And for me, I'm planting the flag now. DeAndre Swift is my league winner choice this year just because of where you're going to be able to get him. I think a lot of people are going to fall for the big names and maybe reach for a couple of rookies depending on landing spots. But DeAndre Swift has proven that. I mean, past 2 seasons, hasn't played a full season, but yet still finished within the top 15 running backs. Yeah. And that PPR value cannot be understated. And if people are so in love with Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's
DJ Chark in there too now, though.
Yeah.
But I think they're
DJ
bringing
Chark
weapons, which maybe negates how much he was used last year in the passing game a little bit. I think he'll still be heavily involved, but some of the ceiling's gone. And as you said, he's never played a full season. Are you really going to predict a full season from a guy who's never done it before?
He's the Todd Gurley to Jared Goff, for Detroit.
Yeah, let's move on to 13. I'm the only one who ranked this guy in their top 10. This guy finishes the running back 5 last year. He goes back, same team without the backup running back who was heavily involved in the passing game. I got James Conner at number 10. Chase Edmonds is gone, so now his backup is Eno Benjamin. I'm not worried about Eno Benjamin taking away from James Conner's fantasy value. There's questions with Kyler, sure, but that seemed to all kind of died down at this point. And Cliff Kingsbury, he's a great offensive-minded head coach. Whether or not I think he's a good head coach in the league, I don't. But he's run some successful offenses. James Conner is heavily involved in the passing game when Chase Edmonds wasn't there last year. I think he could finish higher than top 10. He's just got to stay healthy. That's the reason I have him at 10 and not higher is because of the health. A little bit worried, but he did it last season for the most part. He played 15 games. So James Conner, to me, the touchdowns might drop off a little bit, but I think the workload picks up, which improves on that. I think he'll fall a little bit in the rankings, but top 10 for me, James Conner, with Chase Edmonds not being there. I think that's And can't see too much arguments outside of the injury history of James Conner. Why is he not in your top 10, Zach?
Yeah, so I certainly going to move him up from where the rankings that that I have right now, due to the Chase Edmonds trade for sure. A lot of touchdowns last season for James Conner, but I think the one thing that gets kind of slept on is his involvement in the pass game.
Yep.
You know, whether that's due to the lack of the weapons for Kyler last year, losing DeAndre Hopkins, maybe that played a factor into it. He did have the backfield all to himself, which I guess he does again. It would be tough to see. You know, it's hard to see that Arizona doesn't bring somebody else in, even if it's a lower caliber running back or maybe a later draft pick, something like that. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You know, maybe where James Conner is one of those guys too that can be like sneaky good again, and the fantasy community kind of still views him the way they did when he had his time in Pittsburgh. But if it's those touchdowns that really worry me. If he doesn't really get there, I wonder if you take a natural portion of those touchdowns away, where he actually finishes versus his inflated top 5 position.
Yeah, last year he had a total of 5 games where he was on the field more than 62% of the time. He had 1, 2, 3, 4. He had like 8, 9 games where he was on the field less than 50% of the time because Chase Edmonds was there. You take that guy away, sure, they'll bring someone in, but to me, paying James Conner $7 million a year, he's going to be that running back 1. And in the games without Chase Edmonds, 5, 4, 6, 9, 6 targets, those are numbers you want from your running back, especially if you're playing in PPR. So for me, I think I'm excited for the opportunity to take him as a value pick in my drafts next year, depending on where he's going. I think he will be lower because people are like, oh, James Conner is going to get hurt. There's all these questions with the Arizona offense, which, they talk about their lack of weapons. Their weapons have currently got worse. AJ Green's gone.
AJ Green's been gone for quite some time.
But Christian Kirk is also gone, so they did lose a couple wide receivers. Rondale Moore should take a step forward. Any thoughts on James Conner there, Will?
The jury is out on Arizona.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, Kyler.
Those are a couple teams you want to see.
But...
You want to see what they do in the draft. You want to see how their pre-camp, their organized activities is going. And then you want to watch that first week or two of training camp and just like till someone explains to me what the heck happened.
Nobody knows.
Media, up and down.
Nobody
hey, look,
knows.
We'll see.
Yeah, and then let's move on to the last guy Zach had. Before we run down Jeff's list and make fun of it, the last guy that Zach had in his top 10, Antonio Gibson. Zach, I'll let you talk a little bit about Antonio Gibson and why he cracked your top 10.
Yeah, I kind of was sleeping on Antonio Gibson. He was another one of those guys that I felt like kind of fell into Javonte Williams. I was like, I don't understand why everyone is so hyping this guy so much. So I just kind of looked into it a little bit, and I was like, wow, another guy that missed time, shared the backfield, and still finished top? I think he was running back 11, we said. So you look at it, in my opinion, Carson Wentz is an upgrade. We talked about it last show. Whatever kind of upgrade you view it as, it's, $10 is still better than $5, right? So that's kind of how I'm viewing the Carson Wentz situation. And, if maybe Terry McLaurin can actually show up a few games this year, then you're talking about a serious opportunity for Gibson. But the whole J.D. McKissic coming back is definitely a bummer. Yeah. So you're going to rely again on the touchdowns from Gibson. But I think the talent's there, the opportunity's there, and similar to James Conner, low snap percentage, relatively higher fantasy output.
Yeah, the thing that scares me is J.D. McKissic pulled out of his deal with the Bills and re-signed with the Washington Commanders. I was going to say the Washington football team, but they are now the Commanders. That really just limits his PPR upside, I think, because J.D. McKissic will be in there whenever it's a third down, and they're going to be throwing the ball. So that's why he is outside my top 12. I think I'm at 13 right now. So he's close. When I read that J.D. McKissic had signed with the Bills, Antonio Gibson was up in my top 10. And then I read that, J.D. McKissic has decided that he does not want to sign with the Bills and go compete for a championship, and he would like to go play for a terrible franchise. I dropped Antonio Gibson. What are your thoughts, Will? Anything you want to add to that before we go make fun of Jeff's list since he's not here?
Why would McKissic turn down that same dollar amount?
Yeah, same money, same
exact contract, and he still chose the Commanders.
Yeah.
He when he signed, I was like, oh, there's a sleeper for your draft.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, what happened? What? Randy Gregory? I understand why Randy Gregory left.
Yeah, he wants to play for Dallas.
Well, in the contract language, I get that. But I don't understand what McKissic is doing.
I don't understand what McKiссic's doing either there. The Bills are going to be a competitive team, and you have the real chance to be there. Maybe not the running back one, but
piece.
Yeah, you'd be the receiving back for sure.
I mean, and it's weird to me because he has a chance to be the missing piece, become a hero in Buffalo, and probably secure one more nice contract. I don't understand what going back to Washington and being the Commanders does for his career at all.
Maybe he saw the weather forecast in East Rutherford or wherever the Bills play, and he's like, "Oh my goodness!" I mean, not like Washington's too much better, but
it's a little bit better, I guess.
Warmer than Buffalo.
But let's move on. Zach wanted to know Jeff's list. So we're just going to run through Jeff's list here. Taylor at 1, Henry at 2. We know he's super high on Henry. Harris at 3. That's fair. Ekeler 4. And then he's got Javonte all the way up at 5. Okay, I can see an argument for it. Yeah. He's got Kamara at 6. McCaffrey at 7. Nick Chubb, he's got an 8, which I can't see Chubb going that high. Will can because he's got him higher. He's got Akers. And then his 10, he decided to put a free agent running back right now who's going to be Austin Eckler's backup. He put Melvin Gordon because he thinks Melvin Gordon is going to be a Chief or a Buccaneer.
Wow. I mean, if he goes to the Chiefs, that's for sure. It makes sense. He's going to make his way through the AFC West. Yeah. But the only reason why I was asking is it just felt like when we were doing the consensus, and maybe I guess all 4 of us kind of had at least one guy that was a little out of whack compared to the rest, to the rest of the other rankings we had. So maybe that's kind of why I was asking. I was like, who does he have in his top 10? Honestly, I don't. Besides, once you get past Alvin Kamara, it gets a little murky. But I really don't have too much beef with that. I think it's pretty solid.
I mean, McCaffrey's got to be higher, but other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, McCaffrey's got to play football. That's
it's fantasy. He doesn't actually have to play, right? He can just score points from the sideline.
Right.
But yeah, so I had a great show. I think this is good. We'll be next week with our top 10 wide receivers, and after that, we'll be breaking down some free agencies, winners and losers. So there's a lot to come. We're not going to be lacking content, especially as we get into the draft. Then we'll have draft day content. We'll be looking at your rookies for Dynasty, that kind of thing, talking perfect landing spots. But I want to thank you guys both for being here and talking with me tonight. I want to thank everyone for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. And make sure you tune in next week. You can find our social medias below. They've been scrolling throughout the entire video, so to rewind a couple minutes, you'll find them. Zach's is at Ocean State FF. I'm at Pro Football Craze, and Media is at Media MPC. Check us out. Thanks for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I hope you guys enjoyed being here. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Zach.
Yes, sir. Thanks, man.
All right.